Hello and salam again. Welcome to our regular news updates of Brunson News. My name is Mulki Mohamed, and we are glad to present in this edition a special conversation. With me here today are two highly valued women in our city of Seattle, Washington, and beyond. I would like to start off with my colleague Julie to introduce herself and welcome our candidate Lorena to the forum.
Hi, my name is Julie Pham. I have a consulting practice called Curiosity Base. My family also owns Northwest Vietnamese News, the longest running Vietnamese language newspaper in Washington. Super excited to introduce and welcome Lorena Gonzalez, City Council President and now mayoral candidate. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yes. We want to first thank you for joining us in our conversation today. Can you please briefly describe what your key priorities would be for running Seattle, along with the agenda that your platform is based?
Excellent question. Of course, thank you so much to both of you for having me here in this safe environment to have a conversation about those really important issues. And thanks to all the folks who are watching and listening to learn about this race and about what we can do better together. So for me, it's really simple. I think that the priorities for the people of Seattle are really going to be about a few things. The first one is, as we're coming out of the COVID-19 economic recession, we know that our communities have been hit the hardest and the longest. And so we have to be squarely focused on making sure that we are going to invest in our local economy. That means our small businesses, largely owned by immigrants and refugees throughout our community, and their workers, right? So how are we going to revitalize our neighborhoods? How are we going to focus on our small businesses, the ones that have been hurt the most by this economic recession, and make sure that they can thrive well into the future? That's going to be a top priority. And part of that is making sure that we have COVID vaccinations in our communities and that that's being done equitably. The second thing is homelessness and affordability. We are all frustrated with the amount of encampments that we see in our sidewalks, in our communities, in our parks, and we have to be serious about taking the programs that work to scale to meet the needs of the people who are not just experiencing homelessness, but to the neighborhoods that are being impacted right now by the public safety and health concerns that are caused by unsanctioned encampments. We all want to move in that right direction. I think we can do it together, and I think there are clear ways that I know we're going to talk about today that we can do that, so I won't talk about them right now in my introduction. And then the last thing is, how do we continue to create equitable community safety? How do we do criminal justice reform? How do we identify the next chief of police who is going to truly prioritize transforming how we deliver public safety so that everybody in our community feels safe when and if they need police services?
So 2020 was one of the most chaotic years in recent history in the nation and in the city. Mayor Durkan had a really hard time working with City Council. What did you learn as City Council President, and how is that going to serve you as mayor?
I think as City Council President last year, what I learned is how important communication and relationships are. It's absolutely clear to me that what we need in the next mayor is somebody who has strong working relationships with the current council and with members of the community to bring us together, to identify common ground, and to roll up their sleeves on day one and get to work on the multiple crises that we're going to be coming out of, and in some cases still dealing with starting 2021 and for the next several years. So those working relationships, that communication, constant, consistent communication is really, really important. And right now, I'm the only candidate in this race who has that kind of strong working relationship with existing city council members that I'm willing to use in order to best serve the people of the city.
Thank you. So communities of colors have burned the burden of the pandemic as such as being essential workers. Some businesses have closed due to the digital divide, and students are lacking at school due to internet access and lack of equipment, along with their families struggling with key priorities. How would you go about addressing these such inequities?
These inequities existed before COVID started, and as your question points out, it's been exacerbated. So it's worse now because of COVID. And the reality is that we have got to continue to tackle things around income inequality first and foremost, so that people, if there is a pandemic, we aren't dealing with the sort of devastating impacts of how an economic recession really plays out in our communities. And so income inequality is about making sure that we have high road employers who are going to give people benefits, childcare, health care. These are all things that make us healthy communities that many of our frontline workers don't currently have. And it's important that we have a path moving forward that requires employers to be good employers. It incentivizes them to be good employers, to give our communities that infrastructure we need to have a strong safety net if the bottom falls out. So I think those are important things. The other thing that I want to talk about is at the City of Seattle, everybody knows that we have a race and social justice initiative. What folks don't understand is that it's voluntary. In other words, it is not the law of the land for city agencies to commit to racial equity. It's something we strive for and we're committed to, but it's not required. I would like to, as mayor, make that the law for agencies and require them as part of their business to deliver on racial equity within our communities in the businesses that they do and the services that they provide. And if they don't, there will be accountability by virtue of their budget or otherwise to make sure that, again, we are not just putting words on paper, but we're actually holding ourselves as government accountable to those racial equity goals. I think those are going to be really important tools that we can use to serve our communities better and to serve them through a strong racial equity lens.
Thank you.
Yeah. That's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So let's talk about opportunities and possibilities. What are the silver linings that we just haven't been taking advantage of, especially communities of color?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I love the question about silver linings, especially in a year like 2020. I always talk about how my silver lining has been that I got to stay at home all year with my newborn daughter, and how lucky am I to be able to stay at home for the whole first year of my little girl's life. That's such a precious gift. But I think there's lots of silver linings. I think as COVID has changed how we interact, there are things that we could take advantage in that context. So how do we recenter family and family life, right? How do we have better work-life balance so that we can actually spend time with our families and not working all the time? What kind of infrastructure can we build in the city that allows people to continue to work from home? That digital divide you talk about, right? How can we make it accessible for people to learn at home and be at home? Maybe not 7 days a week, but what if it's a hybrid or a model? And so I think that those are things that are exciting to me and hopeful. And the last thing I will say is that I think even though our immigrant communities, our refugee communities, and our communities of color have been hit the hardest by COVID, I think we've also seen how resilient we are, how quickly we can come together to support each other and to hold each other in community in different ways. Before it was like, everybody come over, I'm going to feed all 20 of you, right? And now maybe it's dropping off some food. Maybe it's doing a FaceTime call and eating together. It looks a little different until we can all get vaccinated. But I think COVID has really shown me how resilient we are as a broader community of color to really be able to come together and support each other and be innovative in that way.
Thank you for speaking to the resilience. That's inspirational. So I know you talked about economic development as one of your pillars. So the city is notoriously bureaucratic and can be challenging for small business owners. And now with the pandemic, coupled with the decline in public safety, how do you plan on addressing these challenges that entrepreneurs face? How are you going to be different from previous administrations?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it is listening, and not listening to delay, but listening to actually understand what the issues are. Business owners, small business owners, entrepreneurs are subject matter experts in their field. I value that subject matter expertise, and we have to be willing to listen to it, and to not just listen to take notes and then put it in a notebook or a file somewhere, but to actually turn it into action. So I hear a lot of the same things, right? How can we get rid of some of the red tape? And I hear very loudly and clearly from folks that what they need is technical assistance, support in understanding new laws that might exist here in the city and in the county. And then also one thing that we're doing right now is allowing small businesses to start at home in their garage. So we have an initiative starting right now called Bringing Business Home that effectively deals with what I think is the biggest barrier to entry into business, which is rent. So allowing people an opportunity to get going now during the pandemic, to get creative, innovative, and start building their business. And when we have enough people vaccinated and we start taking the boards down and we start getting more activity in our neighborhoods, taking advantage of the opportunity of maybe being able to actually move into new available commercial space in our small businesses. But I think we have to deal with COVID first and foremost. We have to get people out into our public spaces in our realm so that there's positive activity and positive foot traffic in our neighborhoods. And we have to make sure that we are continuing to take care of public health and safety issues in our communities. So picking up the trash, making sure neighborhoods are well lit, and making sure that people feel like when they need services for real violent things, that somebody's going to come and respond to that. And then the last thing I'll say is that COVID has really taught us how to be less bureaucratic in the sense, we're not there yet, but less bureaucratic in the sense of, permitting for sidewalk cafes. I think we can build on that. I think we can continue to use that as a model to see how we can get rid of some of the red tape to allow businesses to help us activate public space in a positive way. And I think all of that together hopefully will get us continuing to move in the right direction.
Thank you for those very specific answers.
Yeah.
Gentrification has been another problem that communities of colors have been enduring. They've been wiped out of the Central District and now Rainier Valley. What is your plan for public and affordable housing so that these communities won't lose their zip and area code?
Yeah, we got to build lots of affordable housing. Lots of it. And, our Office of Housing does a pretty good job of building what they can with what we've got. But the reality is that for me, I think part of the pressure of gentrification and displacement is that there's only a few places where developers, for-profit developers, are allowed to build. And there's make no mistake of it, there's a reason that the areas they can really build are in the zip codes that are economically distressed. And so I think that we have to reckon with the racism that exists within our land use codes, and we have to be willing to open up more neighborhoods in our city to allow for housing choices that are affordable to the people of this city. And so long as we pretend like there's nothing wrong with our land use code, we will continue to see displacement and gentrification. That's a supply answer to your question. There are upstream things that we need to be doing to give people an opportunity to access prosperity. We need to invest in people's education and early learning and prenatal care and health care. We need to build these complete neighborhoods to make sure that people have access to self-determination and to opportunity. And so this is it's a both and. There are short-term strategies we can do, and then there are long-term strategies that we need to be working on to make sure that we're really investing in our communities so that we can fulfill our full potential.
Thank you.
Lorena, I know just 2 questions left. So mayors have to be great coalition builders. Who's in your coalition? Why do they support you? And how are they going to help support your vision for a better Seattle? And then Mulki's got the last question.
I think I have a pretty broad coalition. I mean, I'm really proud to be right now supported by several small business owners throughout the city and every corner of the city. I have worked on police reform issues for a long time, so I have a strong base of people who really believe in civil rights, but also understand why it's important for us to deliver public safety. Immigrants and Refugees. I came from the immigrant rights movement. I used to be on the board of One America. Immigrants and Refugees are it's where I come from, and so that's going to continue to be a strong base for me. And I have spent a lot of time working on giving folks access to early learning, doubled pre-K a few years ago, So I have worked very closely with moms and working families and children providers and homeless service providers. And I'm looking forward to bringing all of those folks together with labor advocates to really start building a vision for the city that we can all believe in, and that hopefully will be the biggest silver lining for us as we come out of 2021. And so I'm excited about using all of those relationships to move our city forward.
Thank you. And finally, what would you like to tell our communities as candidate as to why you are the right person to vote for Seattle mayor?
Well, I mean, I feel like the whole interview sort of it shows an example of that. But I want to say to the folks who are watching here that we're at a critical crossroads in our city. We have an opportunity to be bold and to be action-oriented to make sure that we're supporting candidates who are going to deliver shared prosperity for all of the people of Seattle. I bring to this position 7 years worth of experience in local government here at the City of Seattle. I have been a public servant to the people of this city for the last 7 years. And I am ready to, on day one, if I'm elected to be mayor of this beautiful city, to get to work. And so I want to invite everybody who's watching to be engaged, to ask tough questions. I love getting tough questions. I may not always have the answer, but I promise to always get back to you. I want to listen. I want to be compassionate, but I also want to make the tough decisions. And I'm ready to steer this city into the future. I know we've always been a great city. We will be a great city again. And the only way we can do that is if we work together.
Thank you for listening. Please make sure to share, like, subscribe to Runta News channel at YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter.